Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na ma tu'allimuna wa zidna bi fadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. So just remind all those students who are new that please listen to the first three, at least to the first three recordings, because that gives us the kind of the structure of what this book is, how we can critique it, what we're trying to look at, and some of the main concepts there. Very important. Okay, so we're basically talking about now the authority among the Quraysh. So we saw Hashim ibn Abd Manaf, we saw that. We saw this as well. It is alleged that Hashim was the first to institute the two caravan journeys of the Quraysh, summer and winter, etc. So then it says here, to Hashim, where is this? Hashim had gone to Medina and married Salma bint Amr, one of the tribe, the tribe of Adi ibn Najjar. So this is a totally different place. Right? It's like going to another country. Right? Mecca and Medina is like, okay, they're Arabs, but they're not the same people, right? But before she had been married to Uhayha ibn al-Julah ibn al-Harish ibn Jahjaba ibn Khulfa ibn Auf ibn Amr ibn Auf ibn Malik ibn al-Aus, and bore him a son called Amr. On the account of the high position she held among her people, she would only marry on the condition that she would retain control of her family, of her own affairs. If she disliked a man, she left him. Right. So it's important to understand that there is this assumed kind of misogyny, 100% misogyny, before Islam or after Islam. It's not necessarily the case at all. Right. There are certain systems that exist in certain scenarios that are can be labeled or looked at as misogynistic. That's true, but they can't be generalized. Right? They can't be generalized. There have and there always will be powerful women in different stages and different places. Right? So she was one of these people. If she disliked a man, she left him. To Hashim, she bore Abdul Muttalib, and she called him Shaybah, which means white-haired. Why would you call your son white hair? Why would that name be used?
He was blonde.
Because he was blonde. No, that's not. No, I think I don't know if anybody was blonde. So blonde, I think exists in North Africa at that time. You would find some people who are blonde, actually people who are of African descent, blonde. But Sheba, you're going to call him Sheba, with the hope that he will live through childhood and manhood and become an old man, even though child mortality and mortality in general is so common, right? Always have to remind ourselves, everybody is living on the edge, right? Everybody's living in this life where everybody can die any minute, basically. Then his uncle Muttalib came to take him away and bring him up among his people in his town. But Salma declined to let him go with him. His uncle argued that his nephew was now old enough to travel and was an exile away from his own tribe, who were the people of the temple, the Kaaba, and of great local reputation, holding much of the government in their hands. Therefore, it was better for the boy that he should be among his own family, and therefore he refused to go without him. So notice what we see in this society is there is a continual competition to who will take people, right? Everybody wants to have as many people in their family as possible. They want to have as many important people in their family as possible, right? So you as somebody in this society, you are never alone, and you are never abandoned, and everybody is vying for you, right? Compare that to our world, right? So to a great extent, Big Brother has taken the role of the tribe, right? To a great extent. right? Muhammad, you were in, you were in Norway. I think that's very much the case, right? Norway, in many ways, is very much, it's very socialist slash communist, and the idea that the state is more important than your family to some extent is, I think, is there, and the power of the state, right? The loyalty to the state and the power of the state over the tribe. How many Norwegians identify as being part of a tribe? Is that a common thing in Norway?
No, no, not at all. No.
Not at all, right? Like you might, visit your aunt, you might visit your uncle, but you're not part of a tribe. Whereas if you go back into the ancient world of Germanic people, they're going to be parts of tribes, right? Like you have the word Alemani, right? When the Romans are attacking the Germanic tribes, these are all tribes, right? These are all different. So these are all different tribes, and everyone's part of a tribe, right? And you have this tribe affiliation. So this is very important to today, right? Let's imagine, for example, the concept of marriage and divorce, right? What does marriage and divorce mean to somebody in that time? It doesn't actually mean that much. It's not a big deal. You get married and you get divorced, and your child is is kind of sucked into this bigger system. Everybody wants them, right? This tribe wants the child, and they want to be. He's going to be part of that system, and that system, that other tribe wants him, right? So you're always with people. You're always taken care of. You're part of a big system. You haven't seen your dad for 5 years. It's not the end of the world, because you're not raised by your parents only. You're raised by the tribe, right? Today, where it's just you and your wife, right? Here, these two people from Sri Lanka. Now they live in Seattle. Then they had one child and they got a divorce, right? They themselves were by themselves, right? It was just three people. Then they got a divorce, right? She has custody, but he sees the kid on the weekend. So the kid is not raised by a tribe, nor is he raised by his parents. He's raised by one person, then another one person, and most of the time at school. So totally different reality, of how you look at these things. If you look at, for example, Ibn Battuta does a similar thing. Ibn Battuta, he just travels around getting married all the time. You say, well, that's a bit irresponsible, isn't it? Say, well, I've left money with them and they're fine. So this whole the structure of society is so unbelievably important. And Sheikh Mahdi Amin, if those people are familiar with that name, he's working on this thing called paradigm parenting. And he makes this point. He says, like, the nuclear family is not how parenting ever happened. It was not you and your wife with the kids. It's not how it was. It was never like that. It was never just two people working it out with some little kids. It was never like that. Multiple generations of people. You had a system around you, right? Little House in the Prairie, right? I think I can't remember. A long time ago, Little House in the Prairie. They live with grandma and grandpa, right? No, no. Adi, have you read Little House in the Prairie? Is that too white? Too white and too Protestant. They didn't have family though. I thought they had the grandparents with them or something, or their uncle and aunts maybe. You watch it in French. Yeah. But so the nuclear family, okay, it's sister whereas right? But anyway, if you just think about, right, so Muhammad, life in Morocco, right? So right now, obviously, divorce is an issue right now in Morocco, right? Many people, they get married late and they get divorced. But what does divorce mean to a child in Morocco? Are they gonna be just Gonna stay with mum, stay with dad, and that's it? Or does everybody stay with extended family usually?
Has changed now. Like it's the same almost. Like extended family is very hard.
Right? But if you go to the village,
Yeah.
right? So that was a system of the world, right? That you're part of a tribe, right? It's really important. We keep seeing this again and again. The concept of the tribe, this big family, right? So, so this is what's happening. The grandfather is turning up saying, no, he should be with us. And she's saying, no, he should be with us, not with me, right? And so it really shapes this whole thing. And another thing about divorce as well, as you see in fiqh, is again, so like our fiqh books are written in, generally speaking, in societies where there's very little social mobility, meaning people do one thing. You're a farmer, you stay as a farmer. You're a cobbler, you stay as a cobbler. Your grandfather was a cobbler, you're a cobbler, your son will be a cobbler. So the way that they view education is like this. You get a divorce, your wife has custody, but the boys are with you, the male, every day working. So so it's almost like that was almost like a private thing. Like divorce is almost like private. Like whether you and your missus are still together, that's kind of private, but it doesn't really affect the kids too much, because they're still with you getting an education because you were the educator. So here's a 10-year-old boy. He's with his dad all day. He goes home, spends the night with his mum. That's it. So he's not separated. It's not a rupture, right? He's learning emotionally, practically, financially. He's being trained. That's how it was, right? And so is that custody or is that the right for education? So now we bring in Industrial Revolution. We bring in the nuclear family. We bring in mandatory schooling. It's a totally different world, right? Totally different world, right? Bring in COVID, right? You're not even in school with people. You're just online, right? Here's this kid who's online. The only people he ever sees is his mother. That's it. And then he sees his dad every 2 weeks. That's it. Everything's online, right? You got to imagine what a different world this is. These people are part of systems. They have animals. They're dealing with people. Those people want them. There's a big difference between a country wants you, right? Like the country wants you, like, Uncle Sam wants your loyalty, right? Versus your tribe. It's not the same. So yes, there can be tribal problems, there can be abuses, it's true, but it's not the same. So feeling you're part of a big system, right, is very important, right? So it's popularly asserted, so again, our author Ibn Ishaq says, I don't know, that Shayba refused to leave his mother without her consent, and she utterly and this she ultimately gave. So his uncle took him away to Mecca, riding behind him on his camel, and the people cried, it's Muttalib's slave whom he has brought, and this is how he got the name Abdul Muttalib, right? His name is actually Shayba, right? His uncle called, rubbish, this is my nephew whom I have brought from Medina. Subsequently, Al-Muttalib died in Radman in the Yemen, and an Arab mourned him in the following lines: thirsty are the pilgrims now that Al-Muttalib is gone. No more bowls with overflowing brims. Now that he is gone, would that Quraysh were in torment. Matrud ibn Ka'b al-Khuza'i wrote an elegy, right, a poem about Abdul Muttalib and all the sons of Abdul Manaf when the news came that Nawfal, the last of them, was dead, right? And then he continues basically about that, right? And so notice how they're traveling around. They're in Yemen, they're in Gaza, right, in Sham. So they're all over the place, right? Sons and grandsons of princes. These are very important people, basically. Okay, so Abd Manaf, whose name was Al-Mughira. Al-Mughira means the horses or the cavalry who are attacking, right? أغار أغار الركب على القوم. The riders, they came and attacked, right? So he's called the attacking one. Hashim was the first of his sons to die at Gaza in Syria. So Gaza's in Syria? Why is he calling it Gaza in Syria? But Gaza's in Palestine.
Well, all that region, Palestine, Lebanon today, was known as Syria or Sham, right?
Sham. Jazakum khair. It's called Sham, right? The Bilad Sham, right? And interestingly, the word is not actually Sham, it's Sham, right? Ash'ama, ذهب نحو الشام. Ash'ama, right? Sham. So it's not actually, originally, it's not Sham, it's Sham. Okay, followed by, so that's why he's translating it as Syria. So again, what's useful is to look at classical maps. So I don't know in the time of the Byzantines, did they call that whole region that was called Syria as well? I don't know. Okay, I don't know if that classically was that whole region, the Levant was all called Syria. So, but he may be using that translation because the readership that he's speaking to, the people who he's speaking to, are going to be looking at this place through the lens of a classical map that refers to classical Roman areas, right? Okay, followed by Abd al-Shams in Mecca, then Abdul Muttalib in Yemen, and lastly Nawfal in Salman in Iraq. So these people are traveling around a lot, right? Not for fun, but for business, for survival, right? Because you have to understand, you live in Arabia, there is nothing there. Right? It's not a place that can support anything. Right? It was said to Maturud, at least they assert, your lines are very good, but you have done more justice to the theme than to the theme they would have been still better. Give me a night or two, he replied, and he basically changed the right. Basically, these are very important people, right? And people revered them and valued them, etc. And it continues and continues and continues. And as we remind ourselves, some of this poetry is real, some of that poetry is not even real at all. Right? It's made up. So following his uncle Abdul Muttalib, whose name is Shayba, right? Ibn Hashim took over the duties of watering and feeding the pilgrims and carried on the practices of his forefathers with his people. He attained much eminence as none of his forefathers enjoyed. His people loved him and his reputation was great among them. While Abdul Muttalib, who's was sleeping in the Hijr Ismail, in the gap between the semicircle around next to the Kaaba and the Kaaba, he was ordered in a vision. So here's a dream. So it's important. We're going to see dreams, fortune tellers. These are all sources of knowledge for them. There's dreams, fortune tellers, and wise people, right? So they're going to go to wise people for explanation about things. They're going to go have based their things on dreams. Divining arrows as well. These are systems that they will use. Yazid ibn Abu Habib al-Misri narrates to me from Marthad ibn Abdullah al-Yazani from Abdullah ibn Zubayr al-Ghafiqi, told me that he heard Ali ibn Abi Talib telling the story of Zamzam. So this is Ibn Ishaq's chain. He said that Abdul Muttalib said, I was sleeping in the Hijr when a supernatural visitant came and said, dig Tiba. I said, what is Tiba? Then he left me. I went to bed again the next day and slept. And he came to me and said, dig Barra. And I asked what Barra was. And when I asked what Barra was, he left. So Tiba means like something good. Barra, something good. The next day he came and he said, dig Madnuna, the thing that is withheld. Dig the thing that is withheld. He says, when I asked what that was, he went away. The next day he came while I was sleeping. He said, dig Zemzem. I said, what is Zemzem? And he said, mashallah, he's done it in limes here. 'Twill never fail or ever run dry. 'Twill never to water the pilgrim company. It lies twixt the dung and the flesh bloody, by the nest where the white-winged ravens fly, by the nest where the ants to and fro do ply. So why would there be dung and flesh next to the Kaaba? For Hajj, right? So people are coming to sacrifice. This is a sacrifice place point. Right? Okay, and we remind ourselves how systems work, right? Originally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to worship Him in a way that helps other people. You come and pray together, shoulder to shoulder, and you learn how to unite. You give zakat, you fast, you go on Hajj, you learn about other people, and you slaughter animals for the sake of the poor, right? That's how things start, right? So then it shifts with degradation of society and etc. It shifts from animal sacrifice to things like human sacrifice. Or so, for example, with Aztecs, right, and the Mayans, human sacrifice and human sacrifice as well in did it happen in Roman times? I don't know about Roman times. It's human sacrifice. I'm not sure about that, but certainly for the Vikings, human sacrifice was an important thing, right? And for the Germanic peoples, human sacrifice, right? So it shifts from a sacrifice that is there to help the poor and needy to a sacrifice which is just a huge sacrifice. You gave up a lot, but it's very evil and weird. And then for the Quraysh, for example, things about blood itself. So one thing they would do is they would come and bring blood, put blood in front of the Kaaba, right? So blood is sort of in and of itself suddenly, even though blood is sort of vis-a-vis it being a means to provide protein for the poor and needy. So when the exact spot had been indicated to him and he knew what it corresponded with the facts, he took a pickaxe and went with his son Al-Harith, for he had no other son at the time, and began to dig. When the top of the well appeared, he cried, Allahu Akbar. Then thus Quraysh knew that he had obtained his object, and they came to him and said, this is the well of our forefather Ishmael. We have a right to it, so give us a share in it. I will not, he answered. I was specifically told of it, and not you, and I was the one to be given it. They said, do us justice, for we shall not leave you until we have got a judicial decision on the matter. He agreed to accept a woman diviner, an oracle, a soothsayer of the tribe of Bani Sa'd Hudhaim, who dwelt in the uplands of Syria. So notice, dreams, that's a source of knowledge for them. Soothsayer. So they're going to go far away, travel very far away to, and notice as well, there are female soothsayers and there are also male soothsayers. So I don't know in ancient Egypt were all soothsayers, were they all female? I don't know. But you see that in the the Greco-Roman world, right? The soothsayer, the Oracle of Delphi, she's female. Usually it's females. And then witches, right? Witches are often, there's often that connection that witches are female. Okay. So Abd al-Muttalib, accompanied by some of his relatives and a representative from all of the tribes of Quraysh, rode away. They went on through desolate country between Hijaz and Syria, right? A big open space. Until Abd al-Muttalib's company ran out of water and they feared they would die of thirst. They asked the Quraysh tribes to give them water, but they refused on the grounds that if they gave them their water, they too would die of thirst. In his desperation, Abdul Muttalib consulted his companions as to what should be done, but all they could do was to say that they would follow his instructions. So he said, I think that every man should dig a hole for himself with the strength that he has left, so that whenever a man dies, his companion will thrust him into the hole and bury him until the last man. For it is better for one man should die unburied than a whole company. Then they sat down until they should die of thirst. After a time, Abdul Muttalib said to his companions, By God, to abandon ourselves to death in this way and to not scour the country in search of water is sheer incompetence. Perhaps God will give us water somewhere. To your saddles, right? And this is subhanAllah, you know. This morning, I was talking to some young men about, um, priorities in life, and this is a huge problem, right? So what happens is, I don't know, is it a new thing? Is it, I don't know, but basically, like, people are lazy, and they're like, oh, I can't get an excellent job, so I'll get no job. I want to be a professional gamer by the age of 14, and I can't be a gamer by the age of 14, so I just won't do anything, right? Whereas that's not how it works, right? That's not how it works. You go out and find your rizq, right? Go out and find your rizq. Find this job, that job, this place, that place. That's what you do. Things are not set for you. There is no algorithm of success in the dunya. You got to go out and work it out. And so, subhanAllah, this attitude is very important, particularly among young men. So they got their beasts ready while the Quraysh watched them at work. Abdul Muttalib went to his beast and mounted her, and when she got up from her knees, a flow of fresh water broke from beneath her feet. Abdul Muttalib and his companions, crying Allahu Akbar, dismounted and drank and filled their water skins. Then they invited the Quraysh to come to the water which God had given them and to drink freely. After they had done so and filled their water skins, they said, By Allah, the judgment has been given in favor of Abdul Muttalib. We will never dispute your claim to Zamzam. He who has given you water in this wilderness is he who has given you Zamzam. Return to your office of watering the pilgrims in peace. So they all went back without going to the diviner. This is the story which I heard from Ali ibn Abi Muttalib about Zamzam, and I heard one report on Abdul Muttalib's authority that when he was ordered to dig Zamzam, it said to him, "Then pray for much water as crystal clear, to water God's pilgrims at the sites they revere. As long as it lasts, you've nothing to fear." On hearing these words, he went to the Quraysh and said, yeah, 1 second, please. He replied that where was it? You know that I have been ordered to dig Zamzam for you. And they asked, but have you been told where it is? When he replied that he had not, they told him to go back to his bed where he had the vision, and if it really came from God, it would be made plain to him. But if it had come from a demon, he would not return. So Abdul Muttalib went back to his bed and slept and received the following message: Dig Zamzam, excuse me. 'Twill not to your hopes give lie. 'Tis yours from your father internally. 'Twill never fail or ever run dry. 'Twill water the pilgrim company. Like an ostrich flock, a fraternity. Their voice God hears most graciously. a pact most sure from days gone by. Naught like it canst thou descry. I think is describe. In French, we say décrire, right? Muhammad, right? To describe something.
نعم سيدي.
Yeah, so it's
décrire.
décrire. So they dropped this. So I think it means to describe, to descry, right? Naught like it canst thou descry, right? You can't describe it. It lies twixt the dung and the flesh bloody, right? And then it mentions here one. As these lines are part identical to those mentioned above, clearly this is a rival account of the version. Okay. It is alleged that when this was said to him and he inquired where Zemzem was, so one thing as well, if you notice animals in Arabia, right? So yes, there are places in Saudi Arabia today that are green, right? Mountainous areas, etc. The Yemen, for example, there's areas that are they're green and there's water, but in general, there isn't much life, right? But there was more life back then than now. Okay, obviously in the last 100, 200 years, there's things that have been hunted to death, unfortunately, like but if you can imagine things like, I mentioned an ostrich, gazelles, you had the Arabian, not the Arabian lion, but the, what's it called? Asian lion. So I think the Asian lion only exists now in India. It's only in India. But that was, so the Arabs, they talk about lions. So if you have a lion, then you have animals for lions to eat, and you have water. You can't have lions without water and without things to eat. So there was much more biodiversity and more water back then. So we have lions. You're talking about hyenas, right? Not spotted hyenas, but the striped hyenas, which are a bit smaller. We talk about leopards. So I don't know if they have the Arabian leopard. I'm not sure if it exists anymore. I think it's just like a few of them left somewhere in Jordan and Palestine now. But so I think that's extinct. Wallahu alam. Yeah, so the Asiatic lion, yeah, but it's not in Arabia anymore. So if you look at, for example, ancient Assyrians with an AS, not Syrians, Assyrians in Iraq, there's all these things about people fighting lions, right? What's that famous saint with the lion? What's his name? Who takes the thorn out of the lion. There's some famous saint that maybe Saint Francis of Assisi or something. So if you look at ancient, so in Greece they talk about fighting a lion, right? But there's like no lions there. The Barbary lion, I don't know if that exists. Maybe Saint Jerome, I'm not sure. But the point is the presence of lions, right? Lions today, like where are you going to see lions today? It's in Africa, meaning you're going to have to go really far down, right? But you have the Barbary lion, which is in like the Barbary monkey in North Africa. I think that's extinct now, the Barbary lion as well. So, but these things were there. So there's certain systems that have happened where a lot of these things have gone. Like so, even the Sahara. The Sahara was once green. It was a long time ago. It was green, but basically it's becoming drier and drier over a long time. And so the Fertile Crescent was more green, and Arabia was a bit more green. Yeah. Okay. So the ostrich. I don't. Are there still ostriches in Arabia? I'm not sure. Okay, it is alleged that when this was said to him and he inquired where Zamzam was, he was told that it is by the ant's nest where the raven will peck tomorrow. But God knows how true this is. It is alleged. The next day, Abdul Muttalib, with his son Al Harith, who at that time was his only son, went and found the ants' nest and the raven pecking beside it between the two idols, Isaf and Na'ila, at which Quraysh used to slaughter their sacrifices. He brought a pickaxe and began to dig where he had been commanded. Quraysh, seeing him at work, came up and refused to allow him to dig between the two idols where sacrifice is a sacred place. You can't do that. Abdul Muttalib then told his son to stand by and protect him while he dug, for he was determined to carry out what he had been commanded to do. When they saw that he was not going to stop their work, they left him severely alone. He had not dug deeply before the stone top of the well appeared, and he gave thanks to God, knowing that he had been rightly informed. As digging went further, he found the two gazelles of gold which Jurham had buried when they left Mecca. He also found some swords and coats of mail from Qal'a. Qal'a means a fortress, but that's a particular place. Quraysh claimed that they had a right to share in this find. Abdul Muttalib denied this, but was willing to submit the matter to the sacred lot, right? Divining arrows here. So we have oracles, dreams, divining arrows. He said that he would make 2 arrows for the Kaaba, 2 for them, and 2 for himself. The 2 arrows which came out from the quiver would determine to whom the property belonged. This was agreed, and accordingly he made two yellow arrows for the Kaaba, 2 black ones for himself, and 2 white ones for the Quraysh. They were then given to the priest in charge of the divining arrows, which were thrown beside Hubal, another idol. Hubal was an image in the middle of the Kaaba, indeed the greatest of the images or idols. It is that referred to by Abu Sufyan at the Battle of Uhud when he cried, "Arise, Hubal, make your religion victorious." Right, and we mentioned to many of you before. There's a book that's in English. It's called The Book of Idols. So there's a historian of a similar time called Al-Kalbi. He's called Al-Kalbi. I think Abdul Malik Al-Kalbi, and he has basically just documenting material to do with shirk in the Jahiliyyah, and to do with their gods, the names of the gods, the different gods, and these things, right? So we're going to see some things here, but also that book is small. It's called The Book of Idols. It's kind of interesting, and it's very interesting for an Arabic point of view because it's basically all poetry, right? Poetry that has references to this, references to that, right? And as we've mentioned before, we mention again because it is important, right? Today is Friday, right? Or Saturday or Thursday, right? For most of you, Friday for me. So why is this called Thursday? Why is it called Friday? What does that even mean? Thor's Day, yeah. So if you think about it, right? Muhammad and his friends from Norway, they came over, and Denmark and Sweden, they came over and killed us in England, right? The Vikings. So the Vikings come over to England, kill us, make Viking towns, right, in England, and they bring their culture, right? Then we go to Pakistan and India and take over Hadi's country, right? And that's why he's calling it Friday, right? So the point is, there's the Freya's Day, okay, Freya's Day or Thor's Day. Now, could you find a story, like Google, give me a story about Freya, the Viking god or goddess? You could probably find a story about her, right? Give me a story about Thor, right? You'll actually find it, a story about Thor, not Thor in the Avengers, but right, Thor in the original Thor. Like, give me a story about Thor. You will find a story. Okay, does it make sense? You think you better do that? Same thing. You will, you find, for example, a story like about the Greek gods or the Roman gods or the Indian gods. But I don't think you'll find a single story about any of these gods. So there's a problem. There's a confusing issue, which is what happened to the mythology of the pre-Islamic gods. It's very confusing, right? It's very confusing because, like, give me a story of Hubal. Give me a story. So there's rituals and rites and things that they talk about. Clearly, there's references, but there seems to be like no stories whatsoever. Like, when I think about Hermes, right? Hermes and his flying shoes, right? I think Loki as well. Loki also has flying shoes, right? Something like that. Like shoe, he's really Loki's like a trickster. He's really fast and something like that, right? Like there's a whole system. So even though that's a very very old system, so the Vikings they were surpassed by. So it was it? It was the Romans, then the Angles, then the Vikings, and then the Normans and Christianity, right? Or Christianity even before that, and then the Normans, right? And took over England, and that's why we basically speak French in England, right? 80% of English is basically French, right? Uh, Even despite all of those changes, we still have all of these stories from ancient Roman gods and ancient Greek gods and ancient Norse gods, etc., that are there present. But where are the stories of these people? It's just from an anthropological point of view, it's really odd. It's really weird. Like, where are these stories? Maybe. Allahu Alam. But maybe you could ask the same question. For example, where are the stories of the Celtic gods? Right? I don't know anything about that. Right? So if you go to Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Brittany, and North, do they have their own stories of, their own gods that before Christianity? And do they have stories? Maybe not. Maybe those stories have just died out. So if you go to Ireland, they're all going to have stories of their saints, St. Patrick's Day and St. Patrick chasing the snakes out of Ireland. They have all these stories, but they're all to do with Christianity, right? And they might merge stories with Christianity and their folk thing, but I don't know if there's any actual stories of their mythology. I don't know. But it's interesting. Like, what is, Lat and Uzza? Is there a story about them? Don't know. Wallahu alam. Okay. So anyway, he said, make your religion victorious. So Abdul Muttalib began to pray to God, and when the priest threw the arrows, the two yellow ones for the gazelles came out in favor of the Kaaba. The two black ones allotted the swords and coats of mail to Abdul Muttalib, and two arrows of Quraysh remained behind. Abdul Muttalib made the swords into a door for the Kaaba and overlaid the door with the gold of the gazelles. This was the first golden ornament of the Kaaba, at any rate, so they allege. Right? So again, notice his language, so they allege. He's not trying to state things that he's not sure about. He's saying this is the first time there was a golden ornament of the Kaaba. We never heard of that before, basically. Right? And who can remind us then? How did the Kaaba get its first kiswa? How did it get covered in cloth first? Who can remind us the story? Whole issue of We did it maybe 2 months ago, maybe more than that, maybe before Ramadan. Muhammad Shoman, can you remember? With the Jews. So the whole story of Ashab al-Ukhdud and how parts of Yemen became Jewish. So basically, it was a man who was coming through, and he was told by some Arabs as a trick, "Oh, go and attack the Kaaba, and steal their gold." So he was going to do that, and he was told, "No, they're just tricking you because anybody who attacks the Kaaba will be destroyed." So then he asked these Jewish rabbis, like, "What should I do? What do I do with this holy place?" He says, "This is what you do: you go there and you do your tawaf like the people do, and you sacrifice as the people do, and you clothe the Kaaba, right? Which is a lot of money, very expensive. So the reason that why the Kaaba was first covered in cloth was because of the rabbis that told somebody in Islam to do that, and they said, we don't go to the Kaaba. Why don't they go to the Kaaba? Because of the idols that are there. Otherwise, we would be going there, right? So the Jews are the reason why we cover the Kaaba. The Jews are the reason why Islam spread to Medina, as we'll find out later on, right? And if it didn't spread to Medina, it wouldn't have spread anywhere. It would have failed outwardly, it would have stopped. The mission would have stopped, right? Okay, so anyway, so a few at the ledge. So Abdul Muttalib took charge of the supply of Zamzam to the pilgrims. Okay, wells belonging to the clans of Quraysh in Mecca. Before digging Zamzam, Quraysh had already dug wells in Mecca. According to what Ziyad ibn Abdullah al-Bakka'i told me from Muhammad ibn Ishaq. Who's me? We did this last week. Who's me?
Ibn Hisham?
Ibn Hisham, right? So remember that we are reading a tweaked version of Ibn Ishaq as narrated by Ibn Hisham. But Ibn Hisham, what does he do? He expands and edits. So he took the work of Ibn Ishaq, he added things that aren't in Ibn Ishaq, and he cut out things that don't make sense. So our translator is trying to get the original source, right? But now and then we're actually seeing the edited version in it. Because here it says, that's what Ziyad ibn Abdullah al-Bakka'i told me. Okay, well, who's me, right? So this is now back to Ibn Ishaq, to Ibn Hisham. He said that Abdul Shams ibn Abdul Muttalib dug At-Tawi, At-Tawi, which is a well in the upper part of Mecca near Bayda, the house of Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. Hashim of Ibn Abdi Manaf dug Badhar, which is near Al-Mustandhar, a spur of Mount Khandama at the mouth of the pass of Abu Talib. They allege that when he dug it, he said, "I will make it a means of sustenance for the people." He dug Sajla, which is a well belonging to Mut'im ibn Adi ibn Nawfal ibn Abd Manaf, which is still used today, i.e. in his time. Bani Nawfal, the tribe, alleged that Mut'im bought it from Asad ibn Hashim, while Bani Hashim alleged that he gave it to him when Zamzam was uncovered and people had no further use for other wells. Umayyah ibn Abd Shams dug al-Hafr, which means the digging, right, for himself. Bani Asad ibn Abd al-Uzza dug Suqayya, and in the footnote he says others have said it's not Suqayya, it's Shufayya, right, which belongs to him. Bani Abd al-Dar dug Ahrad. Not sure what that is. Bani Jumah dug Sumbula, which belongs to Khalaf ibn Wahab. Bani Saham dug Al-Ghamr, which belongs to them. There are some old wells outside Mecca dating from the time of Murrah ibn Ka'b and Kilab ibn Murrah, from which the first princes of Quraysh used to draw water, namely Rum and Khum. Rum was dug by Murrah ibn Ka'b ibn Lu'ay, and Khum was dug by Kilab ibn Murrah. So was Al-Hafr. There is an old poem of Hudhayfa ibn Ghanim, the brother of Bani Adi ibn Ka'b al-Lu'ay, which runs, in the good old days, we were long satisfied to get our water from Khum or Al-Hafr. Zamzam utterly eclipsed the other wells from which the pilgrims used to get their water, and people went to it because it was in the sacred enclosure and because its water was superior to any other. And two, because it was the well of Ismail ibn Ibrahim. Because of it, Bani Abd Manaf behaved boastfully towards Quraysh and all other Arabs. Here are some lines, etc., mentioned about these things here. Okay, Abdul Muttalib's vow to sacrifice his son. It's alleged, and God only knows the truth. Again, notice the style. He's saying, I don't know if this is true or not. It is alleged, right? Ruwiya, za'amu, they say. That when Abdul Muttalib encountered the opposition of Quraysh when he was digging Zamzam, he vowed that if he should have 10 sons to grow up and protect him, he would sacrifice one of them to God at the Kaaba. Aren't children a pain in the neck? I mean, what do? They wake you up at night, right, Muhammad? And then they wake you up at night and they have to pay for them. Like, what's right?
Alhamdulillah.
Right, Muhammad Shuman just had a baby, so he's not sleeping at all, right? And then you have to pay for them, right? They're just all they mean is just they just cost money, right? So in the post-industrial revolution world where we live, is like you have this kid, and he all he's going to do is waste your time and waste your money, right? And then he's going to grow up and rap against you, right? Come up and say bad things about you when he's older, right? That's what it is. So what's the point, right? Many people are like, yeah, what's the point of having kids? Whereas in a pre-industrial revolution world is very different, right? In a pre-industrial revolution world, for immaterial reasons, you need to have kids, right? So this totally changes the world, right? In a pre-industrial revolution world, you're going to go and marry somebody. You want to marry your daughter to somebody who has a large farm or has a big tribe or both, right? That's what you do. You know, the mayor of this town has proposed to your daughter. I really don't care if she likes him, doesn't like him. That's pretty irrelevant. I just want her to survive the famine, right? That's what people are on the, people are always are facing famine. People are facing extermination. They need to be part of big tribes that will protect them. They need to be part of systems that will help them. And today it's similar, right? Today it's similar. So Muhammad Shuman turns up, well, Muhammad Shuman's cousin, what's your cousin's name again? Forgot his name now.
Also Muhammad.
Also Muhammad. The basketball player?
Oh no, that's my nephew, Jihad.
Jihad. Okay. So Jihad turns up in any Arab country and they're like, oh, he has an American passport. Let's marry him, right? Because the system will protect that person, right? Like you marry that person, you go to America. America is full of, $100 bills coming off the trees. There's food everywhere. Fuel is cheap, right? And, there's stability, right? So it's a similar kind of thing, but it's different. So you're not dealing with a government and a country that will protect you. You're dealing with a smaller picture. So you're dealing with, I need to have boys, right? You need to have boys. Similarly, if you think about polygamy in their paradigm, would it make sense to marry, you're a female, okay? You're female and your primary goal in life is survival. I need to eat and I need to survive. Would it make sense to marry some Romeo who has 2 goats and lives up the hill, or to marry anti-Romeo who you don't like, who has 3 other wives or 10 other wives in the Jahiliyyah, and he has like 100 sons and 100 grandchildren, and if a tribe came through to attack them, you'd be defended. If your husband dies, you'd be provided for. which is better? Do you marry Romeo, or do you marry somebody you don't even like, but he has a big family and lots of money and lots of sheep? Who do you marry?
The latter.
Right? So we have to understand that the world, unlike me and you, right? The world, everybody else on the face of the earth, married Tybalt, yeah. um, what I was going to say, the most people in the world, they grew up hungry and in fear, right? They grow up like the rabbit in the field. The rabbit is going to be eaten by a fox, and the rabbit is hungry. That's how it is, right? So they don't grow up with Disney. They grow up with hard reality, right? Romance is not the same thing for them. Marriage is not the same thing for them. So survival is very different. So we see this here. He says, like, if he has 10 sons that will grow up and protect him, so I need to have a bunch of sons. That means if I can't have sons with one woman, I'm going to have sons with another woman, right? It's just practical. It's like life insurance, right? It's not a personal thing, right? Sayyidina Ibrahim, so Sara radiallahu anha, right? The wife of Sayyidina Ibrahim, she can't have children, so she gives her slave to Sayyidina Ibrahim to have children with, because we have to have children, right? Like if there's no children, we'll all die. So children are an economic protection. You have to have children. You have to have children young. So you're going to get married at 15. You're going to have as many kids as you can, because they're going to grow up to protect you. And you're going to marry people in big tribes. You're not going to marry people in a small tribe, because that's dangerous. You're not safe, right? So you're not going to marry Robin Hood, right? That's not reality. They're not going to do that. Wallahu a'lam. Makes sense, inshallah? So it's really important as we're reading this that we are going through and saying, hang on a minute, I live in the 21st century. What is insane about the way we live life? Post-industrial revolution. There's no family. There's no tribe. The state has taken the place of tribal unit. I don't need kids are a liability. They're not a financial gain, right? What happens to education? What happens here? That's very, very important to see these differences, right? Half the time when we're studying Sira, we're not half of what we learn is just normal life on planet Earth as opposed to the way we live life today, right? It's very important to know that. Okay, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.